John Money, pronoun usage, what else? The sex gender distinction. You are 100% correct.
Wow.
You are 100%.
Let's take it back. I want to hear everything.
Everything that you have said on gender identity, gender expression, John Money, pronoun usage, what else? The sex gender distinction. You are 100% correct.
Wow.
You are 100% correct. I don't know if you've ever heard that from a trans person before.
Wow. So that's what they meant by scatter the event.
So I'd like to say that I'm actually a part of that organization that was going to come and try and derail you tonight. I didn't hear a single thing, though, that constituted an attack on queer or trans lives or an attack on me personally. So I don't know what they were on about there. Moreover, everything that you have said on gender identity, gender expression, John Money, pronoun usage, what else? The sex gender distinction, you are 100% correct.
Wow.
You are 100% correct. I don't know if you've ever heard that
You don't hear this every day.
from a trans person before. I identify as a trans woman. You are 100% correct on there. And it is an absolute travesty that the trans community bases everything on such vacuous concepts. My thing is, though, is I don't agree with your conclusion. I don't agree with it. But more so, the reason why I don't is less a matter of argumentation and more so a matter of method. You've stated time and time again that your approach to this is to try and keep things simple and uncomplicated, as in you don't try and engage with the nuance of the position of trans people. But that's exactly how my org treats you. They don't think that your arguments are worth looking at because they cast you as a transphobe. I did otherwise, and I looked, I'm like, yeah, no, this guy's absolutely correct on all these things.
So which conclusion are you? You said you disagree with my conclusions.
Well, it's the conclusion that of the model that you're postulating of gender, of that it's just this, you have man, woman, they're biologically contingent. My sort of question is, do you think that defaulting to simplicity, if this is the most dire issue of the age, which is something else that I agree with you on, do you really think that a method of simply recoursing to the most simplistic matter of approach is what we should be doing here?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
You
because
don't
I mean, I appreciate I appreciate everything that you said, and I appreciate your attitude.
How does he do this? The way he talks, very calm in pressure or under pressure. He's always very calm, referring to Matt Walsh.
I very rarely encounter your attitude from that side of the ideological aisle. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I do think that making it simple is the right approach because, to my view, it is a very simple question. Now, if you want to get into the personal experiences of each individual and someone who's experiencing gender dysphoria, and what do we do to treat that problem? Sure, there's all kinds of personal, subjective nuances and things like that. If my child came to me and said that they were confused about their identity, I wouldn't just say, get out of my face. I would want to sit down and talk to them, and that's when you get into that becomes a sort of an interpersonal exchange, and so you get into some of those personal nuances and everything, and that's fine. But the underlying fact, the underlying reality is simple, that there are only males and females in the human race. There are no other categories. There is no third sex. It doesn't exist. Even though we hear about intersex people, an actual intersex person would be someone who has the reproductive capacities of both men and women, males and females. Such a person has never existed, ever. So what I see here is a binary system, and in that way, it's very simple, and I think that has to be our message. Yeah.
I would still even say, respective to that even if from your standpoint, there's only this binary, there's two. There's complexities and nuances even within social navigation that still might be worth you looking into. I would also say that a lot of your facts also are off, respective to, for instance, the first sexual reassignment surgery actually happened in the 1920s. So that was before John Money. So it's not a case that
I didn't say his was the first.
What?
I didn't say his was the first. It was probably the first one done on a 2-year-old, but I said he was the one who invented. You started by saying you agree with everything that I said, and now we're going back.
I disagree.
I'm a little confused now.
My point is that if you have it to where you can get to a different conclusion from the same arguments, it means that there might be something deeper going on here that for people who are actually philosophers, not rhetoricians, need to be dealing with.
Okay, we got to move to the next question, but let me just ask you this so we can clarify where we are. Yeah. Do you agree
That
there are only males and females in the human race.
No.
Okay, so you definitely don't agree with my conclusion then at all.
No.
We actually are totally on opposite sides of this question, it turns out. Okay.
I feel like what they're trying to say is, as far as Matt Walsh being a transphobic person, it's agreeable that he's not. But when it comes to a conversation of binary in gender descriptions or sexuality, that is where they disagree. I think that's the summary.
What are the other categories if not male and female?
So it's a difficult question.
We're going to be here all night if I have to doing that.
We're not, because there's none that you can list. So it's actually a very short conversation.
All right. Well, you're wanting to say that you have these other social categories, right? It's a question of, you're saying are, right? So the question here for me would be one of ontology, insofar as we're trying to posit that there is some kind of specificity, right? And you would look at something like intersex and say that this is like some kind of weird border case, right? It's a question of the kind of continuum that would allow for one to come into an embodiment that you would cast as male and female. I mean, something that's really interesting is you said that something like age is makes more sense to identify as. You at one point had, female genitalia when you were in utero. So you've passed through that, right? And what happens to intersex people is that there's just some kind of like different, there's a different of development that occurs there. So respective to us talking about these categories, it's not a case of there being this hard line thing. I mean, the reason why we also are not going to get anywhere here is because I actually would agree with you that something like woman is what would, in a technical sense, be called a floating signifier. So it doesn't have this like particular designatable meaning to it, right?
Actually, I like how he's presenting the argument. He knows that he might be wrong somewhere, so he's actually presenting the argument from a safe space, you know. He's not trying to be disrespectful. Usually people just come and like push their points and just throw points on Matt Walsh, but he's trying to like, I know I might be wrong here, but this is what I think and this is where I'm heading. And you know, it's admirable, you know. We can commend him for that.
That's why we're not going to go anywhere.
That's pretty clear, but I appreciate it. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
That's pretty chill. I always respect that.
I just want to make just two quick follow-ups on that. Is that one thing? I think that this is a tactic that you encounter on the left all the time when it comes to gender, which is to try to obscure it and make it sound complicated and to throw a lot of, these sort of abstract ideas into it. And from what
abstract science ideas,
what I've discovered in this conversation didn't change my view at all on that, is that that's the only tactic they have, right? Is to just try to make it seem complicated, but yet while also not offering any alternative answers at all. And the final thing on intersex, because maybe someone else will bring this up, just so we could get that question out of the way, because it always comes up. Number one, intersex, that category has nothing to do with trans, right? Trans man or trans woman is a biological male who identifies as a female. So even if I were to agree that intersex people are some sort of exception, that would do nothing to vindicate the trans man, because that's a different category. But as it turns out, intersex people are not an exception. These are people who suffer from a deformity, from a condition. Just like someone might be born with one arm rather than two. That does not negate or undermine the fact that human beings have two arms. But if someone is born with only one, then you know that something went wrong along the way. They ought to have had two, but they didn't because something went wrong. So a deformity or a sickness doesn't undermine the principle that we're dealing with.
Okay, that was pretty good. I was expecting it to be heated, but it wasn't really. It wasn't really. As a matter of fact, I like how it went. It doesn't matter what kind of argument you have or anything you want to say it. If you feel like someone is being transphobic because someone is attacking you in some kind of way, say it. Don't try to be aggressive about it. And I like that person came up, presented the argument to Matt Walsh, and whether they both agree or not, there was no fight. At least it was a reasonable exchange where they heard themselves. So yeah, it was beautiful. I like arguments like that. I really like it. And I commend the questions, and I commend also how Matt Walsh answered or handled the questions. It's the end of this one. Let me know your thoughts on that video. If you want us to check out some more, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I didn't want to bring any of these gender videos to the channel anymore. It feels like there is a lot now, It's kind of like extra clout. So I think this might be the last, unless you guys want something specific. That being said, have a wonderful day. Peace.